We're going to call the June 18, 2025 Los Osos Groundwater Basin Management Committee meeting to order. I'd like to start out with a roll call.
Director Cesena.
I'm here.
Director Gibson.
Here.
Director Reinecke.
Here.
Chair Zimmer.
Here. Okay, we'll move to Pledge Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 4, board member comments. Are there any comments from board members?
Glad this day is here finally, I guess. That's about my only comment.
Yes, I agree. Okay. Public comment on board member comments? There are none. Okay, special presentations. We have no special presentations today. We are moving up through the agenda pretty quickly here. Item 6, the consent agenda, 2025. On consent, we have the 2025 financial report and approval of the minutes from the May 21st, 25 BMC meeting.
Yeah, nothing specific of note in the financial report or in the minutes, but happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead and open it to public comment.
If you're in the boardroom and you have a public comment, please come to the podium. And if you have public comment online, please raise your hand. We will take public comment in the boardroom first. Doesn't look like we have any public comment online or in person, so we'll bring it back to the board.
I'll move approval of consent.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Item 7, the public comment for items not on the agenda.
If you have a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you are online, please raise your hand and we will take public comment in the boardroom first.
Dan, can you get that? Okay, sure.
Patrick McGibney, the Los Osos Sustainability Group. It's been over a year since you, the purveyors, sent a letter which appears to have been written by the county to the county, expressing your agreement that our water basin was sustainable and ready for new growth. In it, you said, and I quote, "After careful evaluation, the purveyors are in agreement with the county draft strategy for implementing the 1% growth rate," end of quote. For transparency's sake, please share what it was that you carefully evaluated. What data showed you that our water basin was sustainable and could support more growth? We can all see clearly on the letter that Mr. Zimmer's name was signed representing Golden State Water, but we can remember that neither Ms. Reinecke, or Mr. Cesena were willing to put their names to the document representing their water districts. Who signed for them? Who pressured those signatures? And did they too carefully evaluate the data? As the letter says, the purveyors appreciate the collaborative effort between purveyors and the county to develop a growth management ordinance strategy that will ensure the sustainability of our Los Osos water basin. If it was collaborative, as stated, then why did the two directors sitting here refuse to sign the letter? And how could this strategy allow additional water use from our basin, ensure its sustainability when 3 of the 4 indicators show our basin is not sustainable, is suffering from continued seawater intrusion, and additional use would only exacerbate that problem? The letter also says that the success of this proposal is tied to the annual input from the BMC based on the data, and that input will be submitted to Blaine Reilly, the groundwater sustainability director, who would then provide a technical memorandum as part of the recommendation to the board of supervisors on any changes to the growth rate. One can see why the BMC purveyors would be unhappy having the county write another letter to itself representing the purveyors' views. It would seem that the purveyors, being the managers of our water basin, be the ones directing the county on the sustainability of our water basin. It's been over a year now. We have new data showing the basin is not being pumped within a sustainable yield, nor has it been for over a decade. Maybe it's time you find your own voice and express to the county and the Coastal Commission that our basin is not sustainable and cannot support new growth at this time. You have that power. Please use it.
Just line up behind the lectern if you'd like to speak.
Good afternoon, Deborah Howe. I'm here on behalf of the Cabrillo Estates neighborhood, the Property Owners Association. The Cabrillo Estates Property Owners Association is undertaking an effort to connect to the county sewer. This would contribute to the recycled water and reduce nitrates, both are which are critical issues for the BMC. We would like to connect our over 250 parcels to the sewer, and we would ask that the BMC write a letter of support for this project to the county to move this project forward. We would be happy to be on your agenda at a future time to tell you what we've done up until now to make this a reality. Thank you.
Hi, Lynette Brooks. Sustainable yield is not on the agenda today, but needs to be updated now, not in October or some later time if you decide that you don't have the right data. For years, you used the wrong definition of stop intrusion. Even now, the definition allows more intrusion in many areas. You have been misleading the citizens of Los Osos by your own definition of stop and by your own definition of sustainable yield. You have known that actual data show that intrusion is continuing. You have known that CHG had doubts about the accuracy of the sustainable yield being used as given by statements in the annual reports, such as seawater intrusion in Zone E continued to move inland despite a basin yield metric value of 69, which is significantly less than the goal of 80 or less. And a basin yield metric value of 69 suggests the level of basin production in 2023 should be sustainable, yet Zone E intrusion continues. You knew it was not sustainable. You continue to ignore those data. You told the California Coastal Commission that everything was fine. You did not protest the county adding new development. The BMC continued to pretend to be stopping saltwater intrusion. CHG did not have the backbone to say that the model was wrong and could not be used to estimate sustainable yield. The stipulated judgment demands better. The citizens of Los Osos deserve better. You should come out publicly in a large meeting, Saturday evening, in a big room, to say that you have been wrong. Then you should resign. The stipulated judgment should be deemed ineffective, and Los Osos should be declared a Sigma Basin in critical overdraft. Thank you.
George Hinkins. I'm here to bring attention to the fact that there's been researches in Minnesota and Wisconsin with a database of more than 4,500 people that found that people who lived within a mile of a golf course had 126% higher chance of developing a neurodegenerative disease. Within each mile further out there was a 13% reduction of the risk of that diagnosis. I think it is important that the groundwater here be checked for chemicals that could be used on a golf course, such as pesticides and things to help the grass grow that could contribute, because pesticides can increase the risk of Parkinson's. It is necessary to know what they're using and whether or not it is leached into our groundwater.
Mike Johnston. Just a little history. My parents bought a lot in Baywood in 1973. They were at the Otto family auction where they held up their little flag and that Dad was number 71. And they bid on a lot on Pasadena Drive. They had plans and permits. Coastal Commission was happy. The county was happy. They were ready to build. But, and you can understand how long ago this was, I was in college. My sister was at Cal Poly. I was at Cal Poly. My parents were public school folks. They didn't have the money to build at that time. Dad thought, well, that's okay. We'll make this work. I'm out in the world. I ended up at Morro Bay High School working. My sister went her way. Mom and Dad thought, now we can finally build after all these years. And in the mid 80s, they're ready to build. You all know what happened with the sewer moratorium. Dad was taken aback. Number 6 on the list. And when the doors were opened last fall, and I'm going through and looking at it religiously of we're going to finally be able to build. One of the last things my dear father said before he passed away, he said, Michael, do me a favor. I said, Pops, anything. He said, build a lot, build on the lot on Pasadena Drive in Baywood for my only grandson. I said, Pops, I'll do everything I can. Mom has passed away. Dad has passed away. And I was so thrilled that we were finally going to be able to build. We went through the whole batch program where everything was going to have to be done by March 15th of this year. Architects are expensive. Soil studies are expensive. The whole Title 19 process, the will serve letters. And in the case of the water, it wasn't a will serve letter that I needed to get. It was a continue to serve letter because my parents, God bless them, had a water meter on the lot since 1992. And I just wanted to come here today and thank you, good folks. Thank Bruce Gibson specifically for all you've done to finally move it forward. And I just wanted to put a face for you of someone who has dealt with this for 53 years. Thank you.
Looks like there's no further public comment in the boardroom and there's no public comment online, so we will bring it back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the comments. Appreciate all the input from everybody and if we have any response to those comments at this time, or if
I
you
was wondering about the request from Cabrillo Estates and a letter of support. Maybe we need to agendize that in the future to hear more about it and just see if we might be able to entertain that.
Yeah, I mean, I would support that. I think it, generally speaking, any further connections to Cabrillo State would be helpful. Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, given the county's role in the potential of that, I really don't have an opinion, would defer to my water purveyor colleagues on that, and probably in the end would remain neutral as you decide what you want to do. You know, will say that the county has been working with the group out of Cabrillo Estates. I think the key thing to emphasize is that the project they're proposing is not mandated by any action of a state or local agency. It is a path forward for treating wastewater in Cabrillo Estate that the residents of Cabrillo are interested in pursuing. The county will facilitate that. But again, I want to make sure for the public's benefit and as my purveyor colleagues know, this is not the situation of the prohibition zone and a requirement to do something about septic discharges directly. So, I mean, I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation. There's a number of steps that group is going to take going forward. I'm in active conversation with them, and we'll see where that leads.
Okay, yep, sounds good.
I'll just second Chuck's comment that I would like to also see it on the agenda, and I think S&T would support that.
Okay. So we'll add that to a future agenda item, Dan. Yeah.
Noted.
All right, and regarding the water basin, some of those discussions, I mean, we have a topic coming up that we're going to talk a little bit about that, you know, probably make my comments on that at that time.
Chair Zimmer, can I just address the gentleman that was concerned about being near a golf course and
Sure.
what's sampled for? I just, you know, I mean, we sample for thousands of chemicals to include pesticide components. I mean, maybe not every pesticide out there, but definitely probably the ones that are the baddest actors. So there are lists on the state's website as well as on the EPA's website. They're required to be sampled on probably a minimum of a 6-year basis.
Okay, thank you. So is that outside of your water obligation of testing for chemicals, or is that included in your?
No, so those pesticides would fall under, there's 2 umbrellas. So you have a volatile organic compound group, and then you also have a synthetic organic compound group. And there are, I think, pesticide components that fall within those. So they would just be individual chemicals that are known for whatever reason to need to be regulated due to generally for public health.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
I guess I would just add that, you know, a lot of that information is published on an annual basis in the consumer confidence reports that each of the water purveyors develop and provides to their drinking water customers.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. We are going to move on to the executive director's report.
Yes, thank you, Chair Zimmer. Let me find my place here. So yeah, not a lot to cover in the executive director's report today. I mean, I think a number of the items that we talk about on a regular basis are that we in the executive director report are covered as items in today's agenda. You know, I think most significantly, the water recycling funding grant and the transient model, you know, that's been a major initiative that we've been working on, and we have a specific item to talk about that. I just thought maybe give a little background on that. You know, this is an initiative we've been working on since 2021. We identified a potential funding source. We went out, we pursued, were awarded that funding, which was really critical. The county contributed match funding for that effort in the amount of $150,000 that allowed us to embark upon the water recycling funding study and development of the transient model, which we will hear a presentation on later today. So that's the other thing to report on that. We had intended to have Spencer Harris from Cleith Harris Geologist present on the transient model. They're the primary developer of the model, the authors of the technical memorandums and reports. Unfortunately, I have to report that Spencer has had a medical incident and is currently in the hospital and is unavailable to speak today on the transient model. And so we are not going to be able to do a full, what I would consider technical presentation on the model. I am not qualified to speak to the development and calibration of transient or any sort of numerical groundwater model. We do have information in the agenda packet in the staff report that I developed that I can speak to. And I would sort of defer to the board and how they want to handle the item. We do need to take public comment on the item as it was an agendized item, but that is sort of where we're at with respect to that item later in the agenda. So I guess I would respect or request that, if there is public comment, and I defer to the board on this, on that item, that we reserve that for that item, which will be later on the agenda after the executive director's report.
Can we settle that right now, just in case people in the audience want to make plans on that? I mean, I was given to understand, I understood that Mr. Harris is in the hospital. We certainly wish him well and a speedy recovery on that, but we don't have the presentation of this information. We do have information in the agenda packet. When we get to that point, I think it's the right thing to do for this board, this committee, to continue the item to the next point that Mr. Harris can get. If members of the public want to give comment today, that's fine, but I would suggest that without the information actually presented to us and an opportunity to ask questions of Mr. Harris, and I have quite a number of them regarding various findings, results, and conclusions in that report, that I would suggest this board not speculate on any thing to do with this particular study, especially as I understand it, Mr. Heimel, that there is yet more to do in the overall study, which is a question of regarding the recycled water component of that study. And so again, Mr. Chairman, I would urge that we simply make available public comment, take those public comments, and then work to get this back on the agenda as soon as we can.
Okay, why don't we also hear the development that's happened since our last meeting to this meeting that's not of technical nature that Spencer was going to present, but more of some of the process that I think there's been some meetings and such, and just more of the staff level report and not the technical information.
Again,
Just to introduce that item and then go to public comment.
well, I'd be happy to take any report that Mr. Heimel would like to provide us, but I don't, again, lacking the principal who has the knowledge of any of this technical information, I really think this committee should not speculate on any future steps until we have that information presented to us with an opportunity for the committee to discuss it with the investigator. And again, this project overall is not complete at this point. I understand that we've got yet to see information regarding the recycled water distribution issues that the transient model was really put in place to deal with.
I think Dan did he coordinated the effort though. There is some works that I think that, Dan, you have some information available in your staff report in introducing this item. I just know we've waited such a long time and I hate to walk away from it. I don't think we could, I agree, not discussing anything in technical nature, but continuing our discussion and making some level of comments.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. Mr. Heimel prepared a brief little summary,
Mhm.
and then we should have that presented, take public comment, and then continue the
Continue.
item. I don't
Okay.
want to try and address comments
Okay.
without Spencer
Thank you.
here.
That's my concern. Again, I don't think we're prepared at this point.
But I would like
with
to
the
hear the
information.
comments.
Sure.
We're going to be talking about this for months.
Sure,
Months and months and months.
exactly.
So I would
That's
like to
fine.
start the process of
Yeah.
hearing what people's thoughts are. They've waited a long time and been patient while they listen to us say, wait for the model, wait for the new model. And
But
it's
we-
here.
Right.
No, it's not. That's what I'm saying is
It's-
it's not here yet.
Not the total, no, we're going
Not
to
the
need
total
months.
specs.
months.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I would like to add one thing on that. So it was my understanding, so the technical we have two items here. We have the technical memorandum, and then we have the longer, more calibration centric. So I'm perfectly fine with trying to leave some of the technical explanation of that longer calibration out of the conversation that we're having here on the board level. But I believe the technical memorandum was put together with the intent of it being digestible by us and by the public. So in my opinion, just like with the annual report every year, which is several hundred pages of somewhat technical information that we take and we absorb and then we discuss here without Spencer Harris, I believe we can discuss this technical memorandum and some of the statements that it makes, because I don't think the statements that were included in it would have been made if they weren't very confident in what they were saying.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could respond to Ms. Reineke on what you're talking about is the baseline scenario memo, the 6-page memo. That too was prepared by Mr. Harris. And without him here to present that and to answer questions about it, and I have a number of questions about the conclusions that it draws, again, I think this committee would be speculating. So there's some information in the longer calibration report that relates to the conclusions that are drawn in the baseline scenario memo. And again, Mr. Harris is not here to answer questions on either one. And so I'm not ready to for this committee to take any action based on those memos until such time as we've had a chance to talk to Mr. Harris.
So we won't take action on
Right.
it.
Okay.
We're not
Right,
proposing,
no
but I
action.
think talking about it, like Chuck proposed, I think we're all in agreement of that. Right?
Okay.
I certainly want to hear from the public.
Yeah.
And I think that's appropriate. And again, we continue the further deliberations of this committee to another time.
And I think if some of the board members have questions, they should be able to make those statements too, right? Okay. So we're in the executive director's report. It's completely deviated off of that a little bit, but important conversation for sure.
Yeah, so we do seem to have some new members in the audience today. I would just say that with the executive director's report, there's a lot of information in there. We tried to sort of highlight the new information as the underlined content. And so we don't have a lot of necessarily new information. So I can move through this pretty quickly, and I think we can get on to the items that other items on the agenda. So we talked about the water recycling funding study and the transient model. The other item is the Central Coast Community-Based Water Quality Program grant. This is a project to improve our groundwater monitoring network. At our last meeting, the BMC awarded a selection of Cleith geologists to lead the design and construction oversight of that. In terms of other updates, I'm not necessarily seeing other significant updates other than we do have a new addition to the executive director report which is land use permits. And so we've got a summary table of land use permits in there. I will qualify that I'm not informed to speak to the nature of those land use permits. So, just maybe to get ahead of any questions that people may have, this is more of an update from county planning on progress on certain land use permits within the basin, and additional information is available on the LOCAC website, Los Osos Community Advisory Council website. So that concludes my executive director's report.
Yeah. I have one question regarding the EM data and how that was incorporated into the model in the calibration. And so does it, we didn't really get, I guess, a full evaluation of the AEM project. We were going to incorporate that into the modeling. There was some mixing there. Can you explain that a little bit more, like the information? You have a kind of a scenario here you underlined and updated and how that was used in the modeling, I guess. Or did it align with the modeling is what is there any conflict there? Because those two seemed to, like they needed to mesh together.
I can speak to that at a very high level. That would be a better question for Spencer, and hopefully we can have the opportunity to ask him that question here soon at a future meeting. We did sort of extend the schedule for the transient model to allow for incorporation of findings from the AEM survey into the model. My understanding, and I wouldn't characterize that as a comprehensive incorporation, but they did have the benefit of looking at that data and utilizing it to, in areas, inform the structure of the model.
Okay. It's fair enough. We'll wait till we get Spencer's presentation and kind of dive a little deeper into that. But I just recall our previous meeting when we did the work, we were waiting to incorporate it into the model. Yeah. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go to public comments on the executive director's report.
If you're in the boardroom, you would like to make a public comment, please come to the boardroom or to the podium. And if you are online, please raise your hand and we will take public comment in the boardroom first.
Is this on action item A?
No, executive director's report.
Well, that was the director's, or the report had, oh, okay.
Yeah, so public comment on the executive directors.
Good afternoon, Becky McFarland, Los Osos. Before I say anything, we do have a county representative here, and I do want to say thank you. There's some work being done on dead, dry sticks behind our houses on Highland on the county property. What does that have to do with water? Less fire fuel, less water used to put out fires. So thank you to Public Works. They responded to my letter about the little family that's had a dead, downed tree for 2 years behind their house. So thank you on that. Good crew out there, Hans and Kayla, I think the biologist. So shout out to them. On this report on the AEM, I know we've all been waiting to hear what that report says. And it sounds like even if Spencer gets here or whatever, it's going to be at high level that we can't understand. When you click on the link there, it only goes to something that says what AEM is. I think it would be good. I mean, if we get some average public understandable information, that should be connected to that link. Because a lot of this stuff is high level. Also, very sorry to hear about Spencer. Wonderful man. I know his family, and I wish he were here. I think a lot of people are here because he was going to be here. We're waiting. And if some people don't know, there's some not so good news, it looks like, coming out. And the public needs to be informed in a very understandable way as to what's going on with our basin, because we know things come out of these meetings and the Coastal Commission that do not reflect the metrics. I'm concerned about these modifications to metrics that are being spoken about. Maybe Dan, you could say something about what does that mean? What does that mean to modify the metrics? Is that to modify them to make our sad basin that has seawater intrusion look better so we can promote more building and say, yay, it's all fine? Also, I think Title IX retrofits was in there. Again, there is no limit on the number of guest houses that can be built in this town. They're not included in the 1% growth. You have members of the CSD that aren't informed of this. They are not required to retrofit. They are 2-bedroom homes with a bathroom and basically a wet bar kind of kitchen. So they are houses. I don't know what happened with the ADUs. They're going to be included on that. Hopefully they're at least required to retrofit, but Title 19 is a joke when you can have unlimited number of 2-bedroom homes built with no retrofitting. Thank you.
Hi, Lynette Brooks. I wasn't really planning on speaking on this, but since you put AEM in with the director's report, I've read the model report. There's a couple of paragraphs about the AEM. As far as the report, it says nothing about if he incorporated it at all with the model geology. It only mentions that the AEM shows salt under Morro Bay. Wow, what a surprise. That is the only mention that the AEM gets in the model report. Thank you.
There are no further public comments in the boardroom or online, and we will take the item back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll close the executive director's report and move into action items. The first one is 9A, the annual monitoring report.
Ooh. There it is. Thank you, Chair Zimmer. Again, on this item, I'll try to move through it relatively quickly as well. We've presented on the 2024 annual monitoring report, I think at 3 of our last 6 meetings. So, I think a lot of that information we've already seen, really, including at our last meeting where we had a presentation on the draft report. So really just going to cover process. We started this process, well, the public portion of this process with the release of the public draft on May 16th. We had a presentation at our May 21st BMC meeting to review the draft report and receive comments. We extended we had an extended public comment period through May 28th. We received comments. We've requested that Cleith Harris geologists prepare a response to comments that's been provided with the final draft. And so we're here today for the BMC to consider approval and direction for staff to submit the 2024 annual report to the court as required by the adjudication. Yeah, so I covered this. So yeah. So that's where we're at today.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll go to public comment.
If you have a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you are online, please raise your hand. We will take public comment in the boardroom first.
So this is actually in the director's report also, and it has been every time that a report has come out. And that is a comment by the Department of Water Resources that's probably in the smallest font that you can find in there. But on every report, and including this one that we're talking about right now that's going to be sent to the court that isn't really discussed very much, it says that our basin is in critical overdraft. That is what the Department of Water Resources says about our water basin. I would think that in an annual report to the courts, instead of saying that our basin is looking fine and we're moving ahead, we need to discuss why the Department of Water Resources thinks we are in critical overdraft. Thank you.
Robert Sarby, thank you for the opportunity. In my comments, I requested the 2024 final report provide a description of sustainability. I didn't see any description of sustainability provided in the 2024 final report. The BMC website states under the caption of groundwater sustainability, more information coming soon. Doesn't say anything about sustainability, gives you no idea what the BMC thinks sustainability is. And from our conversation at our last meeting, I don't think there is a definition. I would expect at a minimum, the website should contain the BMC definition of groundwater sustainability. The only reference I can find related to sustainability in your documents is contained in the 2019 Cleith Harris report entitled Los Osos Basin Plan Metric Trends Review and Infrastructure. That document states that estimates of sustainable yield are provided by the basin model and are the maximum amount of groundwater that may be extracted from the basin while maintaining a stationary seawater intrusion front and no active well producing water with chloride concentrations above 250 milligrams per liter. That is Cleith Harris' definition of sustainability. The 2024 report says that the lower aquifer water quality results for 2024 show 5 wells impacted by seawater intrusion based on chloride concentrations over 250 milligrams. These wells are LA10, LA11, LA31, LA40, and LA42. The 2024 report also records an inland movement of the stationary seawater front. So by the definitions provided in the 2019 Cleith Harris report, we're in an unsustainable situation. The Los Osos Basin Stipulated Judgment states, for purposes of adjudication of a groundwater basin, safe yield is defined as the maximum quantity of water which can be withdrawn annually from the groundwater supply under a given set of conditions without causing an undesirable result. An undesirable result means a gradual lowering of the groundwater levels resulting in depletion of the supply or other adverse impacts such as permanent ground subsidence or seawater intrusion. Page 84 of the annual report states that the basin yield metric values below 80 over the last 2 years suggests the level of the basin production in 2023-2024 is sustainable. The previous 2019 Cleith Harris report I cited says the current chloride metric trend direction is consistent with the anticipated trend line, although the timeline for reaching the target is reduced. Chloride metric values reached 225 milligrams in 2016 and have declined to 123 milligrams per liter in spring of 2018. If the metric continues to decline at a current rate of 30 milligrams per year, the targeted value of 100 milligrams chloride or lower would be reached in 2019, approximately 4 years after the basin yield metric moved beyond the target value of 80. Thank you.
Thank you.
Becky McFarland again. As I mentioned before, I'm concerned with words like modifying metrics, but I was also concerned with the discussion last time about sustainability being a meaningless term because it's been overused. We didn't come up with that term. The BMC is supposed to make this basin sustainable. I think any mention of trying to drop that is really concerning. We want a sustainable basin. Also, I want to thank you to the board members who stood up to allow, make sure that we get to comment as much as possible. And at any time, whether there's a special person here or not, this is like almost the most people I have ever seen at this meeting. And to try to shut down any type of public comment, I think is disgraceful. But you know, we can say it over and over again. For new people here, there was not one metric that met the minimum requirement for sustainability in this report. It's very concerning. Not one metric. So tell me if I'm wrong on that. I think this year not. The other one that did meet it in the last 2 years was one that the DWR said you cannot use to show as proof of sustainability. Those are important facts for every person in this town to take into consideration. I want our basin to be sustainable. I like seeing my neighbor finally get to remodel their house or whatever, but you know, if the water's not there, the water's not there. Thank you.
There's no further public comment in the boardroom and there's no public comment online, so we will bring it back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Now, if we have any comments on the public comment, if we want to make any general statements regarding the annual report, you know, we know the information's out there. We're paying attention to the annual report. We've been doing that for every year that it comes out, and those are how we make the decisions and the projects and what we move forward with. So, I mean, it's a tool we use, it's information, and we see the information the same as you do. So, yeah,
It's a report on conditions in the basin in 2024. It's complete. We've had a chance to review it on numerous times and understand the issues that it shows us. And so I'm prepared to move staff's recommendation to approve it.
I'll second that with the comfort for those that need it. Sustainability is not a word we're going to stop using or thinking about. It's ingrained in everything we're doing. So that's a second.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to item 9B, the transient model discussion and construction and calibration of the basin scenarios and technical memorandum. As we mentioned earlier, Spencer Harris is not able to attend today, so we don't have our presentation that we expected to receive. We do want to present the item, provide any information that we're capable of providing, and take the public comment, and both online and in person.
Thank you, Chair Zimmer. So yeah, I'll walk through the staff report, and then that'll probably be the extent of my presentation on this item, given the circumstances that we're dealing with here today. So as I mentioned before, this is an initiative the BMC has been working on for a long time, dating back to February 2022, when the CSD submitted an application for grant funding on behalf of the BMC to complete what we call a water recycling funding program grant. And that grant really included two primary, the scope of the work included in the grant application was two primary components. The first component of that was the development of a transient groundwater model. We currently had, or previous till today, had a steady state groundwater model that had limitations, and I can get into some of those differences later. But we wanted to develop a better tool set to model potential future basin conditions. And so the BMC authorized the pursuit of grant funding to do that. The other piece of that scope of that grant application was the development of basically it's a recycled water / supplemental water supply alternatives analysis. So a way for us to take the transient model, this new tool for evaluating potential future basin conditions, and then run different scenarios to help us better understand how conditions might change in the future. And so one of those scenarios that transient model could run is a baseline scenario. And then there's a presentation on that in your agenda packet. That's what if we just keep doing what we're doing now and pumping at roughly average current rates. The transient model also allows us to evaluate what happens if we change what we do with recycled water. We have a valuable water resource in recycled water from the county's Los Osos water recycling facility. Currently, the majority of that water is going to Broderson for disposal and recharge groundwater basin. But it has the potential for other uses, such as non-potable landscape irrigation, and there's projects underway to investigate that. There are advanced treatment, indirect and potable or direct potable reuse opportunities where that water can become converted into water that you can actually drink, and potable water. And then there are non-recycled water supplemental opportunities as well that can be evaluated utilizing the transient model, such as stormwater capture, a supplemental water supply via a pipeline, and then also modification of upper aquifer, increased upper aquifer pumping. So I just want to speak to that we have the model piece of this initiative, and then we have what a lot of times we call the sort of the engineering analysis, which is really where we leverage a lot of the value from the model as a predictive tool in helping us better understand what are our options for improving sustainability in the Los Osos Basin. and I'm jumping around a little bit here, but so the transient model is an improvement over our steady state model. One of the main things that it's an improvement over is we can model varying conditions occurring year over year. The steady state model, we were limited to a single input for many of the key variables or that we had for basins like rainfall, like evapotranspiration, those things. Now we can model variable dry and wet cycles, variable inputs, and variable extraction rates. And so we embarked on this journey. The BMC, through a competitive process, selected Cleith Harris geologists to prepare the transient model. They also selected a peer review consultant, GSI Water Solutions, to oversee the development of the model so that we have not just one, but two qualified experts in their field of the field of hydrogeology evaluating the development and the calibration and the utilization of this tool. And then additionally, the county retained their own peer review. So in reality, we have had largely 4 or 5 professional hydrogeologists, certified hydrogeologists involved in the development of this transient model. And their analysis and findings are included as part of those agenda packets. In your agenda packet, there are 2 reports. One is a model construction and calibration report. This is a documentation on how the model was constructed and then how it was calibrated, meaning how we used the observation of real world conditions, groundwater levels, water quality, that we've collected over the last several decades. We have this extensive data set of real world observed conditions, and then we use that to calibrate the model by looking how closely the model can mimic those conditions based on the varying inputs that we have from that data. And so that document is has been peer reviewed by both of the peer review consultants. Their comments on the model and response to comments are included at the back end of that document for the BMC and the public to review. And I'm just going to sort of, quote that, the peer review determined the transient model was construction and calibrated within industry standards and suitable for application in evaluating anticipated effects on groundwater systems for various groundwater management strategies. That was a GSI determination. The linker peer review, initially identified a number of potential issues to consider and address for development of a robust tool for the evaluation of groundwater management. But based on follow-on discussions with Cleith Harris, linker determined that the issues were considered and addressed sufficiently and that the model is adequately calibrated for the purposes of what we need to do with it. The model is not perfect. There's a saying in the modeling world, all models are wrong, but some models are useful. And I think in this case, it's not perfect, but it's a much better tool than we had previously for evaluating basin conditions. Additionally included in the agenda packet is the baseline scenario technical memorandum. So this is really sort of the first, I guess you maybe consider calibration the first, but one of the, a scenario that was run, first future looking scenario that we've utilized the model for. And it's a very simple scenario in a sense. Basically, we assume in the model, the inputs are that average pumping quantities over the last 5 years, which are roughly 1,830 acre feet per year, and the distribution. And so distribution of pumping is important. Where you pump matters. And so the baseline scenario assumes that pumping occurs at similar rates to what we've seen over the last 5 years, as well as similar distribution, or occurs at similar locations or similar wells. And so that model is then ran for a 45-year time frame with those assumptions over varying 45 years of hydrology. So we input actual observed rainfall and other hydrologic conditions over a 45-year period, and then evaluated to see what happens in that. And so in that scenario, seawater intrudes, which as an indication that average pumping and distribution is not sustainable by the definition that the BMC currently has for sustainable yield. The difference in the results of the steady state model indicate that the basin in an amount is, so we tried to put in here what changed, what's different between the steady state model, which told us that 2,380 was an amount that could be pumped over an extended period of time, and what the new model is telling us. And the transient model is an improvement over the steady state model. It contains close to 2 orders of magnitude more calibration targets. It has updated layer geometry and aquifer parameters. So we've improved our understanding of the groundwater basin by drilling new wells and actually getting physical measurements of the depth of the basin in areas that we didn't have before. And it also allows us to simulate variable hydrologic patterns, including wet and dry cycles over a 45-year period. I've kind of spoke to that. And then, the other thing that the baseline scenario gives us is, information on the extent of seawater intrusion that, could occur over the next 45 years. And, it's estimating that it could advance, and all this is in the staff report, at 24 feet per year in a lower aquifer zone D. There's greater advancements in certain areas versus other areas. And then in zone E, it's moving forward at a lower rate of 9 feet per year, and continuing again in certain areas than other areas. It does not, based on, reach any active community water supply wells in that 45-year time frame, but it does get close to one of the wells. And there's again, all models are wrong. This model is not perfect. But it can be a tool to help us indicate what conditions might be like in the future. So, and I really, obviously wish Spencer was here for his health and for the BMC and the public's benefit. There's so much more we could talk about, but, that's, what I can speak to here today. Plus what we're going to do from here. So this is not the end. I think, as Bruce, we're still in the middle of it. We haven't even finished this project. We have a lot of work ahead of us. So we have a new tool. We can use this tool to now better evaluate sustainable yield. We can use this tool to better evaluate new supplemental water supply opportunities, new recycled water opportunities, new, demand management measures, new pumping adjustment measures. We have 2 aquifers, or well, more than 2, but 2 primary aquifers here in the upper and the lower. We have wells of different geographic distribution within the basin. So there are options for us to improve conditions through management of our existing infrastructure and resources, but also through evaluation and consideration of new infrastructure and new resources. And so, I think it's favorable that we already have the study scoped and funded to do that evaluation for what are our options for moving forward and addressing what this new information is telling us. And so with that, I'll conclude a presentation on the transient model.
Thank you, Dan. Bring it back to the board before we go to public comment. Any initial questions? I'll save mine till after public comment.
Just a comment. I can already think of another scenario that we need run to have look at, and that is the fact that we've got another Program C well ready to fire up. You mentioned spatial distribution of the pumping affects the seawater intrusion, and we've got a well that's ready to go up South Bay Boulevard. We just need PG&E to hook it up. It'd be interesting right there to start and see just does that have, or what sort of effect it would have on this picture that we're looking at. So we've been taking the steps, doing the things, but this is a whole new set of information, and it's going to take us some time to digest it.
I have a long comment, and I've been debating on whether I want to read my comment before. And I think I'm going to go ahead and read it before we dive into it. I mean, it's actually in line with a lot of what Dan already said. It's really just based on some of the facts and figures that are already out there with the current annual report in the transient model. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. So I'm Beth Renicky. I'm with S&T Mutual Water. And this is me taking an opportunity to respectfully request that Chair Zimmer receive my comments and consider my proposed actions to address the dire state of our basin. My comments are summarized in the following list and expanded upon thereafter. Number 1, prioritize a reduction in pumping and stop and reverse seawater intrusion. Number 2, connect all remaining non-sewered homes to sewer collection systems. 3, implement a stormwater capture program. 4, add forever chemicals, PFAS, and Chrome 6 to our basin management plan. My comments. Seawater intrusion and overpumping. If the current average over the last 5 years is not sustainable, as the Cleith Harris geologist memo directly states, we are effectively pumping more than 100% of the sustainable yield. That means the basin is currently being overpumped several hundred acre-feet per year if we aim to stay below 80% of the sustainable yield. And I've included a table that you can look at that compares our pumping to those numbers. The 250 milligram per liter line of intrusion. We should remember that the key statement of this memo is simply that the current pumping is not sustainable, but I will go further and say that it is beyond unsustainable. If we change nothing, the model shows that the 250 milligram per liter line of seawater intrusion will move in significantly. The area of our basin that will potentially be lost in 45 years is depicted in Figure 1 and amounts to 120 acres. We are overpumping right now by a lot. If we proceed at this rate, we will lose an average of 2.66 acres of area in our Zone D each year. The model will be an essential tool in determining the extent to which we have exceeded the sustainable yield. Still, there is no question that we must act decisively and quickly to implement measures to reduce future intrusion and make every attempt to regain the earlier point of the 250 milligram per liter line. The Title 19 study. The Mendaus report provided us with some very useful information. According to the report, there are roughly 118 acre-feet in credits to be found in our community. I propose that we repurpose Title 19 from a growth support tool to a program report that benchmarks where we need to seek accountability for water use in our community. Conservation efforts should be a required responsibility for each of us, not a choice that should be monetized at will. Figure 2 and 3 shows the typical water use and breakdown, where credits are predicted to be available when the study was completed. Sewer connections. Only about 4,700 out of our roughly 6,500 homes are connected to the sewer system, and the most recent nitrate metric is showing worsening groundwater quality conditions. The sewer was installed in 2016 to reduce nitrate loading, yet we are still failing to reap the expected benefit of the project. The cost to the community is still very real, with most typical households paying $1,980 per year, according to the county's website. If the county is collecting around $9 million each year from the citizens of Los Osos, then it may be time that we reevaluate the overall success of the project and begin to rethink how safe it actually is to keep a quarter of our homes on septic systems. Figure 4 on the following page presents the areas with their severity of nitrate loading shown on a color scale, green, low severity, to purple, most severe. 2 tracts of Los Osos are severe. 1 is moderately severe. Given the extensive research that is invested in compiling the local area management program it would be wise for the BMC to recognize that we have more work to do in the area of reducing upper aquifer nitrate contamination, and eliminating septic systems is a place to start. Additionally, by connecting 1,800 more homes to the sewer system, we can potentially capture, treat, and recycle an extra 240 acre-feet per year. This will allow the county to make more future investments in the reclamation facility, since these homes would be providing additional revenue toward operations and maintenance of the system. Cabrillo Estates homeowners want a sewer connection. There are 266 homes in Cabrillo Estates, and most want the county to help facilitate their sewer connections. Currently, they are facing administrative obstacles. This delay is hurting our basin. We need to maximize our use of recycled water, and the Cabrillo neighborhood could be an easy source of 25 acre-feet per year in additional recycled water. The BMC should support this project, and the county should ensure that the pathway to construction is as seamless and direct as possible for the Cabrillo homeowners. Based on the report commissioned by Cabrillo Estates to determine feasibility of the sewer project, the county could collect $6.6 million in connection fees alone, and the homeowners would pay for the cost of construction. The planning of this project should be provisioned in the 2027 county budget, if not sooner. State water is an offset to pumping. State water will play a crucial role in the future of Los Osos. The state water will function within our water portfolio as an offset to using our groundwater during wet years when it is available. If we use state water and eliminate pumping of 200 to 600 acre-feet in a wet year, we are leaving those vital resources in place to stave off seawater intrusion. This should be considered a crucial component of our water future in Los Osos. Stormwater recharge. We have several opportunity areas where we can implement stormwater capture to allow for more recharge from rain events. Right now, much of our water flows out of the bay because most of the town is sloped in that direction. This is a simple solution that could pay dividends with relatively low investment. I recommend that we use a transient model to identify such locations and look into investing in catchment facilities where such solutions are feasible. In a very simplified sense, we can assume that a 1-inch rainstorm over the 2,880 acres that comprise Los Osos would effectively drop approximately 240 acre-feet of water. The calculation is based on the fact that 1 inch of rain over 1 acre produces about 27,154 gallons of water, which is equivalent to approximately 0.083 acre-feet. Capturing rainfall can be done on a macro and a micro scale, from large basins to small cisterns. Emerging contaminants. New data indicates additional risks, including PFAS and chromium-6 contamination, highlighting a major vulnerability to our existing water supply. These cannot be ignored in the context of our basin. Both contaminants have been detected in all 3 purveyor wells. PFAS is found in the county's monitoring wells throughout Los Osos and is a known part of the recycled water effluent going to the Broderson Mound. If we do nothing to recognize this water quality threat, we might see a day when at least one of these contaminants impacts all wells in our community. PFAS are incredibly pervasive, exceptionally persistent, and very difficult to eradicate from groundwater. We must include the issue of PFAS and chromium-6 in the basin management plan, along with strategies to mitigate their impact on our drinking water supply. And lastly, equity for all users. I would like to bring to your attention a significant financial imbalance within the Los Osos community. Currently, residents within the historic prohibition zone are assessed nearly $2,000 annually for sewer services, and the basin management fees of $273,067 are largely borne by this group. In contrast, well owners who pump from our basin are not subject to any assessment for their use. Additionally, the $68,267 paid by the county is likely derived from the general fund, which is contributed to by all property taxpayers in Los Osos, not just well owners. It is imperative that all water users share equal responsibility in terms of both cost and conservation. Financial incentives and monitoring have been crucial in achieving water-saving goals in Los Osos. By installing meters and increasing water rates, S&T Mutual halved our water use in the span of a decade, from 55 acre-feet in 2013 to 27 acre-feet in 2023. So I believe it is time to extend this philosophy to the remaining users who also rely heavily on our shared water resources. By ensuring that all users contribute fairly, we can promote sustainable water management as we strive to bring the basin back into balance.
Thank you, Beth. Just my comment on your written comments. I think you captured a lot of the issues before us. It did a well job putting that together, and some of the things that we've been talking about, looking at, knowing we have to address. I think, your last point about equity of all users is really the key. How do we fund and how do we equitably pass those costs on to the entire community? When we started this journey through the ISJ and first started our committee here, one of the initiatives was a funding mechanism. We hired a consultant to help us with that. The intent that we would have a community-wide funding mechanism for the projects, and what we perceived as the solution at that time fell short. We weren't able to get traction on that. We felt that going out for a community assessment and funding would not be successful. And so we stopped that process. And I think, we all of us talk, all the comments have suggestions of what we need to do, but not how to get it done. And it's ultimately going to take a funding mechanism to put the solution just on the water ratepayers or the sewer ratepayers, or the combination of the two isn't going to be feasible to have that happen. So I think some part of our solution, we're going to have to talk about a funding mechanism and implement a funding mechanism. I think as the community, that's probably the biggest contribution that we could have, is to support that and get on board with, as we develop and get this information from our modeling. What you've put together, I think, is a good foundation for that. And then ultimately talking about this funding mechanism, to have the community support that and back that and really help that funding mechanism, is going to be a critical part of the success moving forward. Okay, any other comments? We'll go to public comment at this time.
If you have a public comment and you're in the boardroom, please come up to the podium. And if you're online, please raise your hand. You will take public comment in the boardroom first.
There's actually 2 comments. Hi, Lynette Brooks. First, I'm glad you guys decided to hear us all. Bruce is kind of trying to say we can't do anything because Spencer isn't here. I mean, the report is out there. So, if Spencer hasn't explained it well in the report, that's his writing. That's, I'm sorry he's not feeling well, but it should be in the report. Given that the transient model seems to be matching current intrusion relatively well, and it predicts farther intrusion with current pumping, it is a large step forward in having a model that matches known intrusion. The report and the model, however, do have some problems, as also noted by the peer reviewers. First, for some reason, parameter estimation software was not used. This makes it impossible to get statistics about sensitivity and prediction uncertainty. The baseline technical memorandum acknowledges this inability to quantify prediction uncertainty. The GSI peer review recommended using parameter estimation software, but was ignored. Many other recommendations from both reviews appear to have been ignored. As I have said before, the stipulated judgment mandates peer reviews. I do not think the judge meant for the reviews to be ignored. Second, and related to the first, the report does not mention if manual sensitivity analysis were done for recharge and pumping. These values were estimated outside of the model and have uncertainty associated with them. How does changing them by 10% or something like that affect simulated water levels and chloride concentrations? Third, the calibration does not capture seasonal variations in water levels in many areas, and simulated seasonal variation is almost completely absent in Zone E. Zone E appears to be isolated from seasonal changes in recharge and pumping in the model, but not in reality. Using time changes in water levels instead of just water levels as calibration targets may have helped determine the parameters that are obviously incorrect in the model. As this is the zone with the most intrusion, because it is the deepest zone, it is critical that this part of the system be simulated correctly. It is not being simulated correctly. Fourth, the simulated chloride concentrations through time are not even close. The maps show the intrusion front is simulated in about the right position, but the GSI review states, for the transport component of the model, matching the arrival time and extent of the seawater front, along with the general chloride trends, is of greater importance than matching individual measured chloride data. However, this model does not match the arrival time of the intrusion front, nor does it match the general trends. When chloride gets to a well, it goes up really fast. It does not do that in the model. This inability of the model to accurately simulate the arrival of the intrusion front and rapid rises in chloride that occur in the aquifer bring a great deal of uncertainty in the model's use as a prediction tool for management changes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Rhett Brooks, civil engineer for 37 years. First, I'd like to thank the board for bringing in reviewers of both the steady state model and the transient model. Stetson is certainly a very good choice back with the steady state model. GSI is a great choice for the transient model. And Randy Hansen is a retired USGS hydrologist who actually developed a lot of the programs that the USGS follows, was an excellent choice. And Lynette actually knows him personally. And so he's an excellent hydrologist. So thank you very much for those. But that does bring me to one comment, is that at least two of the firms, GSI and Stetson, have much more extensive experience at transient modeling, much more experienced hydrologists than CHG does. I think you've got this whole thing backwards. CHG is very good at geology and field data collection. But to be honest with you, that's what they should be limited to. The transient model should be passed over to some firm with far more extensive experience than CHG. And I would highly support GSI or Stetson in that regard. The model report is lacking in detail and data to make the model understandable. In fact, the GSI peer review found that the report is so lacking that they created 113 pages of figures and tables to better understand the model. They also included 18 pages of text describing their review. In contrast, the part about the model in the CHG report is only 27 pages long, much of which are figures. Some parts about the model are also in appendixes. There's one thing I want to point out in this a little bit, skipping ahead since, not everybody has seen the model report yet. Broderson Mound is really not working yet. Yes, it's fairly new, and yes, it's going to take some time, but it's not getting nearly enough water. And so the prediction of what Broderson Mound was going to do to prevent saltwater intrusion right now is really not happening. And it may not happen for a very long time if it ever does. And so there is a point where you've got to seriously consider abandoning Broderson Mound and looking at injection wells along the coastline to try to prevent saltwater intrusion. There's no point in continuing to dump water into an area where it may not be helping at all. Back to the report. The report is, well, I'm going to skip. I've only got 5 seconds, but thank you very much for listening to me. Thanks for your time. Excellent.
Thank you.
Beth.
Wow. Thank you, S&T Mutual. It's the only time that any of the purveyors have actually stood up for our community and said things that are really important. Patrick McGivney, Los Osos Sustainability Group. With this new transient model data that supports what Ms. Brooks has been trying to tell you for the last year and the sustainability group for the last decade, which is our basin is not sustainable and pumping at the current safe yield is allowing further intrusion into the seawater intrusion. With this data, the sustainability group will continue its appeals of new water depending development to the Board of Supervisors and the Coastal Commission. But it's time you act and stop allowing the county to dictate how our water basin will be used. You've known for years that the steady state model was flawed, that it was never programmed to stop seawater intrusion, your #1 mandate listed in the basin plan. You have also known the definition of a sustainable yield was when it didn't allow undesirable results like seawater intrusion. Yet for 7 years, you allowed seawater to advance further into our basin. None of you are hydrologists, yet you've been tasked with a monumental responsibility of managing our community's only water supply. You've depended on the expertise of those in the know, of actual hydrologists and those with PhDs, except their goals were to amplify pumping, not to stop seawater intrusion. The transient model has now made that clear. The sustainable yield you approved several years ago of 2380 acre-feet yearly allows seawater to continue its advancement into our basin. The sustainable yield of the steady state model told you was safe came from the model program by Cleith Harris geologists at the direction of the county. As new wells were entered into the model, more fresh water was in the basin was calculated. And when the county was asked if the model was showing sustainability, the answer was that the model was showing a trend towards sustainability. But that was good enough for the county to declare the basin sustainable. Building could proceed. There's been at least 6 water intensification projects approved by the county in the last 6 months. None of these were on the wait list. None counted as part of the projected 1% growth rate. The sustainability group appealed these. But with the new declaration of sustainable water supply, the appeals were denied. There's another water-dependent project the county will be approving next month, which will be appealed. But unless you, the BMC, use the safeguards for development you touted in your letter to the county, and let the county and the Coastal Commission know new data from the transient model is showing our basin is not yet sustainable, further appeals will be denied. And the transient model has given you now direction to follow. The question is, will you follow it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Sarby, thank you again. I appreciate your comments, Beth. I would really like to have a copy of them. The executive director has my email if that's possible. As far as monitoring these people who are not being monitored, I would recommend Flume. Most of these people have an internet connection. Pretty cheap way to do it. Flume doesn't cost over $100. Most of these people, like I said, already have an internet connection. So I think that'd be a very inexpensive way to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Becky McFarland. Thank you to Director Reinecke. In my heart, I was giving you a standing ovation, and I was wishing that we'd all just stand up and cheer as loudly as we could, but I know we're supposed to behave ourselves. You voiced so many of the concerns about our basin. Amen, and again, I say amen. I am concerned that when S&T combines with CSD water, that we will lose the important voices that S&T have provided through the Director Reinecke and before her, Director Cody. I mean, having you there is, it's like a ray of hope. At least it's like, yay, somebody's saying it, really saying it. I spoke with a DWR geologist about 2 years ago who told us that the best basin management committees have public members. And Beth spoke to well owners up in Monterey. They have one of the best BMCs, and they have public members. I know this isn't set up through the courts this way, but that would be a valuable thing to add to this. It may be a way to get those people on board with saving our basin because they'd be part of it. I'm pleased we now have a transient model. Most of that is beyond my understanding. I'm glad we have people that do. But, you know, I'm concerned, again, with the talk of modifying metrics, whatever that means, and dissing the term sustainable. As I live right below the Broderson leach field, it too concerns me that the mound has been stalled at 50% for years, and it is not currently recharging the aquifer. Any mention of the recharge should be deleted from reports and spoken words in here until it actually does recharge. Every time it's mentioned, it should say it's stalled. It hasn't been recharging as far as we know. And in regards to sewering the entire town and sharing the cost burden of protecting the basin, some may remember James Bishop, Regional Water Board employee that was on the CSD. He's also an expert in on-site water treatment, whatever you call the things, that are replacing septic tanks. He himself said that 30% of the nitrates still leach out of those systems. Those are not a viable option. Everybody should be on this sewer, and everybody should have been years ago. It's ridiculous to have a prohibition zone where we are funding this and trying to protect this while others are not. So go for it. County, we need you on our side. You know, it started with things like Cabrillo's and
Becky,
a different
your
watershed.
time's up.
Thank you. It says I have 22 seconds.
The bell ring. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I get 5 more
apologize.
seconds.
Yes, you do.
Mark.
You can have 20 seconds if you want. I apologize for
With
that.
20 on there. But anyway, we've heard silliness. I've lived here 40 years and I took a lot of science in college. I'm not an expert, but I know that we're in the same, watershed. Just ridiculous things that have been huge mistakes for our town. Let's get it right now. We can do that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Becky. Sorry about that.
Richard Margetson. Isn't it good that the first project didn't come to fruition where all the water was going to Broderson? When the recycled program was being developed with the wastewater project, we were pushing because we were all concerned that we didn't want a lot of the water. We wanted the least amount of water going to Broderson. And there was an attempt then to for egg exchange. A lot of money was spent on that. What I call the $1 million mile of pipe that produced basically nothing. Is that something that might be in the works in the future, pursuing that again? The Title 19 program, there's 2 developers in the area that have been questioned about how their retrofit accumulation is going, and they're not concerned about it. If they basically have said, we don't get them, the project's still going to go through. So where have they gotten an indication, because they're having a hell of a time getting them? Where have they gotten an indication, what department, who's they talking to that, oh, the project will still go through even if you don't collect the credits? I think that's very important, that the county is forced to verify, and that occupancy or building does not happen until those are collected. Possibility of a community-wide funding source. It's a shame it couldn't have happened years ago, but if it goes out now, you're up against the funding source for Sunnyside. That might be an initiative. And the CSD is probably going to have to put forth an increase in the special fire tax in the near future. Just something to think of. 3 things that may add to people's tax bills, especially in this economy. And Beth, I appreciate your comments. I hate to correct you on something, but there's not 1,800 homes that are not connected. There's whatever the number you had, 4,700. That's connections. Sunny Oaks Mobile Home Park is considered one connection, but there's 64 units in there. Moore Shores is considered one connection because everything flows to the connection at the street. It's 164 homes. So just 87% of the community is connected to the sewer. So when you run the numbers, it's not 1,800. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you.
There's no further public comment in the boardroom, but we do have one online. Lynette, all you have to do is unmute yourself.
Hello, Lynette Tornatsky, Los Osos. I seem to remember from the prior sewer project that injection wells had been considered, but due to expense, they were left off the project. Not for answer today, but perhaps at some point we would like an answer to how expensive injection wells are. And that's my question. Thank you.
There's no further public comment in the boardroom or online.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the comments. We'll bring it back to the board. Any director comments?
I'm just glad this day is here, that we're finally taking a look at this model. And I think we need Spencer for the next phase. But I'm glad to see everybody here and paying attention.
So I would like to just touch on the injection well. I mean, I can provide a little bit, I'm sure Dan could too, just kind of more context about what an injection well is versus what we have at the Broderson Mound. So when you put recycled water onto the ground, your treatment requirements are just to tertiary degrees, which is, I mean, it's a pretty standard level of treatment for most wastewater plants at this point. And if you decide to inject it, you actually have to go far beyond that, which generally requires a reverse osmosis treatment. And with reverse osmosis treatment, you also have now a brine waste line. So because Los Osos doesn't have a brine line like Morro Bay does, the chances that we would be able to either afford or install an injection well at this point, at least right now where we're at currently, I think it's kind of probably the reason why it never got off the ground.
Yeah. Thank you, Beth. Okay, yeah, so, just kind of jumping back to the projects and the information at hand, I think I'm glad that we're here. We started out this journey many years ago with a model that we've now been able to improve and it's a better tool for us to make these decisions. We all sit here as a group together and understand that there are projects that we need to do. How do we fund those projects? Mentioned that part of it. That's a big concern of mine. We definitely, everything that, or the majority of the projects that we mentioned are very expensive projects to implement. So that's going to be a significant factor. If we could do everything at one time and had the funding for that, it would have been done. So I think, overall, all of us have sat here with the best intentions, making the best decisions we can with the information that we have at hand. And we're going to continue to do that. I think we have a better tool now. I'm looking forward to the future. I definitely need to rely on Spencer for the technical expertise to help understand that. And if there are, I know when we started the new modeling proposal and the work that Spencer was going to do, there was a scope of work. We couldn't have him do everything that we want him to do. There's going to be future phases of this modeling and additional work that we're going to ask him to do. It's a tool. It's the starting point. Getting that baseline that Dan described is very fundamental. We have some big decisions coming before us in the next meetings, and the basin yield and such are going to be critical decisions that we make from this modeling. So we're looking forward to that journey, and hopefully we improve conditions. We heard from a property owner that is requesting water service, and we have an obligation to those members of the community also. And trying to fit all of that into one package is difficult. It's hard decisions, and ultimately it's going to take some funding to make that happen.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I think the theme of the day is, yes, there is a lot more work to do. I appreciate Beth putting her thoughts to the paper here, and we'll, I'm sure, be discussing these issues as it goes along. I think it's important to emphasize to this committee that the work on understanding this new modeling technique is not done, because we have not had Spencer here to clear up a number of things and to explain to us exactly what this model can do and what it can't do, what it's useful for and what it's not useful for. And there are a number of details in the peer reviews that need to be resolved before this committee makes any decisions based on the results that come out of any scenarios that are modeled here. So I do agree that we have gotten to a state-of-the-art, a modernized version of the computational software that we need to properly manage this basin. As Mr. Heimel said, all models are incorrect to an extent. Some are useful, but I want to emphasize that we have not yet determined exactly what this model is useful for. And that's going to require some very thoughtful analysis on the basis of this committee. I get it that various members of the public have conclusions that they've drawn about the state of this basin and what policies of land use the county should and should not pursue. At this point, I understand also that some of these opinions might be able to be changed and some of them might not. So that's just the reality out there. But again, before this committee makes decisions as to basin management, we have yet more work to do on understanding the capabilities and lack of capabilities of this model. So we wish Spencer the very best in his recovery, and we'll look forward to picking up this conversation when we can.
Yeah. And I think, we all agree that there's going to be work to do. I think Spencer put out enough information to understand that he's acknowledging that we have work to do and some improvements to make. So
on the model itself, and that's in the peer review. So, I mean, there's pieces of this peer review that this body needs to pick up and analyze and decide how we're going to use this model in the face of the uncertainties and the lack of understanding of certain sensitivities and parameters and a variety of things. This, again, I know people would look at some bottom line results coming out of the tech memos that have been published in our packet. But in fact, for responsible management of this basin, there's some more very serious conversations to be had.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he did write some stuff in there that is pretty compelling that it's written in there. So we can, I don't think we should talk about it right now. I think let's listen to, we agreed to listen to Spencer's, but I just, when I read it, I understood what he was saying. So, no, I'll leave it at that.
So I'll just, say the same thing. I mean, I understand what Supervisor Gibson is saying. Models aren't perfect. But I do think after not one, but two peer reviews, and like Dan said, 5 separate hydrogel, they approved this model, and it was only after that Spencer released his memo. And in his memo on page 2, under baseline scenario, he says, based on the threshold exceedance in Zone D, a basin yield of 1,830 acre-feet with the recent spatial pumping distribution is not sustainable. And he used 45 years, I believe, because that is the extent to which the model is reliable enough for us to use that information. If you go too far out, you begin to create more error in your assumptions. And so, I mean, I think what he did was reasonable, and I don't think he was out of line in making the statements. But yeah, of course, we are going to make adjustments in the model as we acquire more data. That's what it's based on. And we have a lot of data. In terms of data collection, our basin has a lot. 2 sample sets every year for the last, what, 10 years or more? I mean, that's a lot of information. And not all of it is usually contained in our metric values. So I'm sure they used all the different wells, water levels, so on and so forth. Anyways, I understand there's always questions, but at this point, I do think that he was confident in the statements he made, even though he's not here. And I also hope that he's doing well and we get to see him soon.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could, let me illustrate the point that I was making about the need to have further conversations by quoting from the peer review by GSI Water Solutions. This is on page 18. The model is not fully set up to evaluate the following. First bullet, estimating predictive slopes of chloride trend and concentration in individual wells. So that's the first question, because so much of what we hear relies on what this model has predicted in terms of chloride trend. That issue needs to be addressed first and foremost. I would point out in the other peer review by Linker, that group issued a bunch of questions, requested a bunch of responses from GSI, which they got from Cleith Harris. They got those responses from Cleith Harris, but they did not issue a explicit statement that said they believe this model is adequate to accomplish any particular goal. So those are the kinds of things that, again, that I'm referencing when I indicate that this committee needs to have further information about the utility of this model and what it's to be used for and what it is not to be used for.
Sure. Okay. Thanks for that clarification. Okay.
I wouldn't be a good administrator if I didn't maybe just bring this up and prep the board and the group. When we start talking about more work to do, that likely means more time and money. So I just want to make sure that we're all aware. We had a limited budget for this project. We cobbled it together with grant funding and county contributions. And so if we want to pursue these additional improvements and other things, we may need to be able to, as the BMC, find additional funding for model enhancements and then also for evaluation of additional recycled water and supplemental water supply scenarios. We have, sort of a limited budget for both of those things. And so just wanted to put that out there as a primer.
And is that funding better spent on projects or modeling? I mean, that's always been my scenario. Do we need to know the details of the model, or is there enough information at a high level and that money's better spent on a project to stop what we know? That was kind of the basis of what I was trying to say in my comments. Like, generally speaking, I think we all agree, we got to continue managing the basin. What does that mean? We'll work together as a team and come together and support the solutions we decide as the committee we are and what we've done in the past years. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close this item, and that's going to bring us to the conclusion of our meeting here today. So thank you. I appreciate everybody coming and providing comments. Meeting's adjourned.